Hello everyone, I'm Gemma Beall and welcome to Attaining the Second Cognition. In my video, Start Thinking Like a Psoyca, I shared with you the fruits of my contemplation last week. The spherical observation part got me heavily contemplating how much I've been through on my path, both spiritually and in the 3D, and what I've missed at lower stages of cognitive development, so I began asking myself some questions. The main question I asked myself was, what was the biggest hurdle I had to cross on my Psoyca path to get to second cognition? The answer was intimidation. And it wasn't just on my Psoyca path, it was all throughout my whole entire life. I'm sure each and every one of you, if not currently, have experienced being intimidated and possibly being intimidating. In this presentation, I'm going to share some of my experiences and my insights about this topic from my own Psoyca path from being intimidated, as well as being intimidating to others. Like most people, I experienced a lot of being bullied when I was a kid. The bullies I experienced all focused on different aspects of my appearance in their bullying. Some focused on my size and body weight, some focused on my skin color, some focused on my glasses, some focused on the size of my ass, or not being cool enough. You get the gist. These are the most common things that kids bully each other over, and this bullying creates anxiety both in the mind, psychologically, and in the body, physiologically. What we experience with these bullies are the aspects of intimidation and being intimidated. As I became an adult, this type of intimidation changed, and it was no longer focused on physical appearance, and the range of this intimidation goes unnoticed by most people because adult intimidating factors different from those of children. It is the adult intimidation that I want to address in this video. When I was 17, I experienced my first real encounter with an adult bully. He was my boss and the owner of the company. He was such an asshole that his customers called him Snake. His daily goal, and he bragged about it every day, was to make as many people cry as possible, and to be honest, most days, I was the one that he made cry. This behavior was horrible and it gave me great anxiety, both psychologically and physiologically. And it was something I had to endure because I was in the work program at school, and if I quit, I would fail my class and wouldn't be able to graduate. When I went to my teachers and the school principals, I was told in nice words to suck it up and deal. So I did. The day after graduation, I quit that job. Several years later, I had another boss, and although he was just as bad as an intimidating asshole as the first boss, he wasn't aggressive about his bullying, it was passive-aggressive, which is far worse. Luckily, though, he wasn't the head boss, and he did this to everyone, and he pulled a passive-aggressive stunt so bad that one of the guys turned him into corporate, an investigation was conducted, and he was sent to Siberia, literally, to work where he wasn't around other people. I don't regret either one of these experiences because it taught me something very important about myself. I decided at that point I would never allow another person to intimidate me, and I haven't. But one of the side effects of standing up for yourself and others is that it has a tendency to make one intimidating to other people. Intimidate means to frighten or overawe someone, especially in order to make them do what one wants. What I've discovered on my journey, long before I studied psychology, was that nobody, in actuality, can intimidate someone, regardless if they are being intimidated. The reason that others become intimidated is because they are insecure within themselves psychologically, but the same reason is why people intimidate to begin with. I swore after my second boss that I would not ever allow anyone to intimidate me, and although I psychologically meant it, it didn't stop me from the internal anxiety of being around someone that is deliberately trying to be intimidating. A few years after the second boss, I got a job with a company, and my new boss was one of those intimidators. In the interview, I didn't put up with his shit, I gave it right back to him. I was shocked when I received the call that I had gotten the job. On the very first day, the lady I was replacing gave me a warning. He's Arab and he believes in Sharia law, so he has a low opinion of women, so be prepared to be intimidated. I told her I wasn't worried because I don't allow people like that to have that kind of control over me. A few weeks into the job, his boss pulled me aside and asked me what I had done because my boss was afraid of me. I told him, I don't put up with his shit. He said, good. Sorry, this is funny. I worked for this guy for several years, and once he stopped trying to be intimidating to me, I stopped being a brick wall to stop his shit, and he turned out to be not bad of a boss after all. One of the positive side notes, he learned to stop trying to intimidate others, especially the women in the office. It's very difficult in this 3D world that we live in to not experience being intimidated by others or being intimidating to others. I personally do not have any intent to be intimidating to others, and I do find it uncomfortable when I feel others are intimidated by me. However, when I encounter a bully, I shove their shit right back up their ass, and although I'm not trying to intimidate them, I'm glad when they are intimidated by me because it prevents their behavior towards me and towards others, but my glee isn't from a point of ego, it's from the stance of a Psoyca warrior putting an end to a petty tyrant. As we begin our spirit path, we begin learning more about who we are and what we are here to do. One needs to go within and understand the effects this external world has on our minds and our behaviors. As I stated, although I had grown the psychological balls to stand up to intimidators, it didn't change the psychological reaction my body would experience in the form of anxiety when I had to do this. Part of my Psoyca battle was to alleviate the internal anxiety associated with standing my ground from the intimidators of the world. Intimidators are petty tyrants, and there are a lot of people that we are surrounded with day in and day out that are these types of petty tyrants. This doesn't mean that they are all bad people. They have picked up bad ego habits, and most people, to be quite honest, are too intimidated by them to stand their ground. I'm going to ask you a series of questions to ask yourself. How many people do you know that you've not said something that needs to be said because you were afraid of how they were going to react? How many times have you refrained from saying something non-offensive because you were afraid of how others would take it? How many times did you do something you don't want to do, non-dangerous of course, because someone else coerced you into it and you didn't want to disappoint them or you were too afraid to say no? If you notice, afraid is the key word in all of these questions, and all three are examples of the subtle intimidation mentality, though it's created by other mentalities. The New Age doctrine of docility not only perpetuates this intimidation mentality, but it also perpetuates the bully mentality. You see this theme all of the time in movies, and I can attest to this being a truth. Once you've kicked a bully's ass in front of everyone, they pretty much stop bullying you, and sometimes they stop bullying others as well. But there's a very fine line between being the victim of bullying and becoming a bully yourself, or a bully in the eyes of others. The difference lies in the mentality and the intentions. In the welcome video, I had a list of definitions that I asked you to keep in mind as we move through these presentations. 2 words I want you to recall now are protagonist and antagonist. If you don't remember these definitions, please refer to the other video or Google them. With our work, Endel and I are very passionate about sharing because the information we share is very important and can help others undo a lot of their indoctrination if they consider the information and do the hard internal work. This passion, and being that this is our channel, we are, as the word is defined, protagonist. I saw a comment a few weeks back that someone had left on another channel, and the opinion of the person, as directly stated, was that Endel and I were antagonistic to the commenters when our videos were on Doug's channel. Now, being that a majority of the work being criticized was our work, and we had been invited and told mi casa es su casa, the critics are, as the word is defined, antagonist, not the other way around as perceived by this commenter. Now, we've explained that everything presented in the first cognition is reversed, or inverted, and this mentality is directly in line with that inversion. It's the same inversion mentality that criminalizes rape victims. Now, before you get upset, I'm not saying that this is the same thing as rape, but it is the same mentality of the inversion. This mentality, in my opinion, is one of the primary factors in the mental processing of intimidation. I want to analyze these 3 questions that I asked you earlier. The first question: how many people do you know that you've not said something that needs to be said because you were afraid of how they were going to react? Now, in your mind, think back to an instance that you found yourself not saying something that needs to be said because you were afraid of how the other person was going to react. Was this fear based off of past patterns of similar behavior by the person to a similar situation? If so, was their reaction because they inverted in their mind the meaning of what you said that previously set them off? The second question: how many times have you refrained from saying something non-offensive because you were afraid of how others would take it? For this one, you can also go into your own mind and look at situations in your life that you've encountered this, but for this one, I want to use me as an example. In our book, The Common Sense Revolution, I stated that I don't see skin color because I look at people for who they are, their spirit. Their spirit and how they treat themselves and others has nothing to do with their skin color. I also state that because of how I view it, others consider me a soft racist because I don't give value to the plight of people of color. I also stated that a lot of people think that acknowledging someone's skin color is racist, but not acknowledging someone's skin color is racist, and in the realm of common sense, how can anyone not be a racist under these circumstances? Another person's plights, whatever they may be, is a circumstance. It's not a definition to define who they are. This perspective is another one of those mentalities that is inverted. I work with a lot of people of color, all different colors to be exact, and I treat them all the same. I'm nice and friendly to the ones that are nice and friendly to me, and I shut down and ignore the ones that are assholes to me or others. Even though psychologically I do not experience fear or being afraid of how others will view me or respond to things I say anymore, there are still times that I do feel a twinge of physiological anxiety when someone takes something the wrong way because of their inversion mentality. The cliche, "you can't please everyone," is a cliche for a reason. So don't create anxiety and intimidation in your mind on trying to please everyone. You know what's in your mind and in your heart. Fuck them if they don't understand. Question 3. How many times do you do something you don't want to do, non-dangerous of course, because someone else coerced you into and you didn't want to disappoint them or were too afraid to say no? This one is a doozy, I think, for everyone. Do you know the psychological label for this? It's called peer pressure. And peer pressure does not end after adolescence. Another name for this is herd mentality. The reason I broaden this topic of intimidation to these other mentalities is because every single one of these mentalities is either the basis for or the catalyst for intimidation of others or by others. Look into your own mind, into your own experiences, and analyze the times you felt intimidated by something or someone. What was the reason? What was the cause? What was the motivation for the intimidation? How much of it had to do with you and how much of it had to do with the other person? In my experiences I've shared, the 3 people were actually trying to intimidate others. 2 of them succeeded with me, the 3rd did not. Why? Because I didn't allow myself to be intimidated. Intimidation is not an easy habit to break, but as with everything else on this path, it takes hard work, but it will only be accomplished if you try. You can't succeed or fail if you never try. Thank you everyone for listening and considering this information. Thank you to all of our subscribers and the ones that are commenting in these videos and help expanding on the topics. Please continue to do so. As long as you are respectful, we won't bite. Nor are we trying to be intimidating, so don't let yourself be intimidated. Dig deep and let your Psoyca out. I'm Gemma Beall. Until next time, stay the course and don't give up on yourself.